Very serious business in Europe right now and in Southeast Asia, the South Pacific actually, with China. And I believe China and Russia are coordinating what they're doing. And as pointed out by the Daily Mail, nearly 64,000 U.S. troops stationed in Europe could be deployed to the continent's eastern flank if President Biden makes such a call to counter growing Russian aggression at the border with Ukraine. Now, during the course of my discussing this article, you're going to see various very important charts that you might want to check out. The USS Harry S. Truman has already been placed under NATO command for the first time since the end of the Cold War, while 40 warships, 175 aircraft, 90 tanks situated throughout Europe could also be readied for conflict. I remember when we had like 1,500 or 2,000 tanks in Europe. I'm quite concerned that we don't have that many tanks in Europe, quite frankly. Biden has ordered 8,500 U.S.-based troops to stand ready to deploy to Eastern Europe, while military officials have presented him with a plan to send 50,000 more if the security situation deteriorates and Russia launches an invasion into Ukraine. Here's what they're concerned about. Ukraine, yes. I mean, that's a very big deal. But as we talked about the other day, Ukraine borders 4 NATO allies, 4 of them. And the concern is, once Russia gets ahead of steam, are they going to stop? Now, you might think this is kind of a flight of fancy. No, it's not. This is the history of Russia. It's the history of Germany. It's the history of these various regimes in Europe. And we have to be prepared for that. As I speak, there seems to be a split among some of the European countries and a split in addition among them with us. And you can imagine which countries are getting cold feet. One of them goes by the initials of Germany. And Germany has been a big problem for a long time, you know, with the oil pipeline it insisted on. It's just very, very stupid to be dependent on the Russians. Biden announced the other day that whatever oil or gas, that Russia cuts off, we will supply. We don't have the capacity to supply that. Biden diminished our capacity, and we don't have the capacity to get it there. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about, because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Let's go on. At the same time, the U.S. told families based at the U.S. Embassy it's Kiev, but now it's Kyiv, or Kyiv. Just changes. At Kyiv to go home due to the continued threat of such an attack, the State Department said. Though the number fluctuates due to changing withdrawals and deployments, the U.S. had about 175,000 troops stationed abroad as of September 2021. A total of nearly 64,000 of those service members were stationed in Europe. The U.S. has about 750 military bases across 80 countries. But you can see how over time, Biden, the Democrats, and other administrations have depleted our force structure. And we have the protectionists in our own country, whether the Bernie Sanders of the Democrat Party or the Bernie Sanders wing of the Republican Party, isolationist wing, and there is some history of conservative isolationism in the 20s and in the 50s. Very, very damaging. You can see that they've had an impact. Well, you know, we don't need to go to war with Ukraine. I mean, with Russia over Ukraine. What's in it for us? And blah, blah, blah. We're not seeking to go to war with Russia in Ukraine. And Biden has already said we're not sending troops into Ukraine to fight the Russians. What he's trying to do is strengthen the NATO countries in and around Ukraine, particularly very close to Ukraine, hoping that the fighting doesn't bleed over, because that capacity exists. You know, I talked about this the other day, and I want to emphasize it now. My concern is that while all this goes on, Communist China is looking at Taiwan and other areas where it can stretch its wings. And you can understand that if we have forces aligned against the Russians, and if our Navy's also pulled because of China and Taiwan, that this could be a huge problem, particularly considering that we're not structurally prepared for both. I mean, that would really cut our forces thin. This is why you build a military up for war to prevent war. Joe Biden's provocations also with respect to Afghanistan and Iran, the enemy takes note of this. Afghanistan is self-explanatory. We spent many days on this, and you saw it with your own eyes. In Iran, people do not realize what's going on. Iran is playing the United States for fools because they know we have one as a president. They are literally months away from having nuclear weapons. They already have ICBMs, and this is becoming a huge problem. Iran has loaded up Hezbollah and Hamas with weaponry, and the Hutus in Yemen, who have been attacking Saudi Arabia, destroying Yemen, the horrific genocide there, and now missiles being fired into the UAE, which is an American ally, which is one of the best of the Arab states, and but a very small Arab state. You know, it has a small monarchy there. You may recall that they were part of the Abraham Accords 2 summers ago. All of this is going on, plus the inbred Un over there in North Korea has fired off 3 missiles in the course of a few weeks and talks about the ability to do more. So again, they're all coordinating. Iran is selling oil to communist China. They're not supposed to be selling anything to anybody. And Israel has a very weak leadership structure right now. Even though they're very concerned about what's going on, it's not Netanyahu. And as a footnote to Netanyahu, have you seen how those cases have crumbled? They don't have any cases against Netanyahu. They've concocted phony cases. Then they discuss the potential of a plea deal. And part of the plea deal is he can't participate in politics for 7 years. So he and his family said, no, we're not going for that. We're not jumping into that. All right, so this is a huge problem. You could see the charts. You could see what's going on. And, you know, you would think Congress would come together right now, you know, agree to expend emergency funding for additional forces or whatever extra forces we need, not just to send a signal to our various enemies and adversaries, but also to actually fund them. That is, American forces. But instead, they're still chasing Donald Trump. They're still navel-gazing. They're still trying to push through their Voting Act, and they're still trying to push through the massive inflation bill, redistribution bill, by using salami tactics, you know, cutting piece after piece after piece.
For all this and much more, sign up for Levin TV.